My name is Renee Walker. I'm 28 years old. Last week, the night before Thanksgiving, my mother called at 6:15 to tell me I wouldn't be at dinner this year. Not because I'd done anything wrong, because my sister's new husband thought I made people uncomfortable. You ask too many questions, my mother said. Connor's under a lot of stress. He needs one holiday where nobody feels interrogated. Then she added, "You've always been the independent one. You don't really need us the way Lauren does." So they erased me from Thanksgiving. I said nothing. I hung up. The morning after Thanksgiving, Connor Pierce walked into a conference room, expecting to finalize the biggest deal of his career. The moment he saw me sitting at the table, all the color drained from his face. Because in that instant, he knew he had made a very serious mistake. Before I tell you what happened, if this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? But to understand how we ended up in that room, you need to understand who I was in my family, and who I'd always been. My father died when I was 18. Heart attack. No warning. One day he was coaching my high school soccer team. The next day he was gone. Lauren was 22. She'd just dropped out of community college for the second time. She moved back home. And my mother, who'd always worked part-time as a medical receptionist, suddenly had to hold everything together on $36,000 a year. I got a full scholarship to Indiana University. I moved into the dorms 3 months after the funeral. And somewhere in those 3 months, the roles got set. Lauren was the one who struggled. The one who needed help with rent, with car payments, with every small crisis that felt like the end of the world. I was the one who figured it out. The capable one, the independent one, the easy one. I remember my mother saying it to relatives at Thanksgiving 2 years after Dad died. I was home from college for the weekend. Lauren had just broken up with another boyfriend and was crying in the bathroom. Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen and said, "Thank God for you, Renee. You've always been so self-sufficient. You don't need the same kind of support Lauren does." I was 20 years old. I'd just failed my first organic chemistry exam. I was working 2 part-time jobs to cover expenses my scholarship didn't touch, and I was so lonely I sometimes went to the library just to be around other people. But I smiled and said, "I'm fine, Mom." Because that's what the easy one does. She stays fine, so everyone else can fall apart. The pattern held for years. When I graduated college in 2019 and got my first job as a procurement analyst at Summit Healthcare, my mother said, "That's nice, honey," and then spent the rest of dinner talking about how hard Lauren's retail job was on her feet. When I got promoted to procurement specialist 2 years later, I mentioned it at Sunday dinner. Mom nodded and asked if I could co-sign a car loan for Lauren. I said no. That's when I became the selfish one. Not because I wasn't helping. I'd already lent Lauren $2,000 she never paid back. I'd covered her phone bill for 6 months when she was between jobs. I'd driven her to job interviews and helped her write resumes and listened to her cry about men who didn't treat her right. But the one time I said no to something that could have wrecked my own credit, I became the problem. Lauren stopped calling. Mom got quiet whenever I was around. And I learned something important. Being strong didn't make me valued. It made me expendable. Because people who don't need help don't need to be seen. In 2023, I got promoted again, senior procurement manager. It came with a significant raise and an office on the executive floor. I told my mother over coffee. She said, "That's wonderful, sweetie. Lauren's thinking about going back to school. Do you think you could help her with tuition?" I didn't mention the promotion again after that. And somewhere along the way, I stopped talking about my life at all. I stopped telling them about the contracts I managed, or the vendors I negotiated with, or the fact that I'd just bought my own apartment at 27. I learned to make myself smaller at family dinners, ask fewer questions, laugh at the right moments, not correct anyone when they assumed I still did hospital paperwork. I thought I was keeping the peace. What I was actually doing was teaching them I didn't matter. Last June, Lauren met Connor at a hospital charity gala. He was 33, VP of sales at a medical device company, drove a nice car, wore expensive suits. He said all the right things to my mother, complimented her cooking, asked about her work, told her she looked too young to have daughters our age. Mom was thrilled. Lauren was glowing. And I was the only one who noticed that Connor never looked me in the eye. At that first family barbecue on the 4th of July, I tried to make conversation. Asked him about his company, what kind of devices they sold, how long he'd been in medical sales. He gave vague answers. Oh, we do surgical monitoring systems. Pretty technical stuff. Don't want to bore you with work talk. Then he put his arm around Lauren and steered her toward the grill. Away from me. My mother pulled me aside later. Don't interrogate him, honey. You're making him uncomfortable. I was just asking about his job. You know how you can be. Not everyone likes to be interviewed at a barbecue. I stopped asking questions after that. Connor proposed in late August, 10 weeks after they met. The ring was nice. Too nice, actually. I saw the price tag still attached to the box when Lauren showed it to Mom at her house. $8,500. I didn't say anything. Mom cried happy tears. Lauren started planning a wedding, and Connor started showing up at every family event like he'd always been there. And every single time, he positioned himself between Lauren and me. Literally. He'd guide her to a different chair, suggest they sit on the other side of the table, find reasons to pull her away when I was nearby. I told myself I was being paranoid. But then came the Sunday in early November when we were all at Mom's house for dinner. Connor was talking about work, saying he was closing a huge deal with a hospital network that was going to change everything for his company. Summit Healthcare, he said, probably close to $2 million, meeting with procurement after Thanksgiving to finalize. My mother turned to me. Isn't that where you work, honey? I looked up from my plate. Summit has 23 facilities across 4 states. We contract with a lot of vendors. Connor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anyway, he said, changing the subject fast. It's been a great year. Married Lauren, growing the business. Can't complain. They got married October 26th. Small ceremony, 85 guests. I was a bridesmaid. Not the maid of honor. Lauren chose her college friend Emma for that. But I smiled in the photos and gave a short, safe toast at the reception. Connor's boss was there. Nice couple. The CEO of his company and his wife. Connor gave a toast too. Said something about closing the biggest year of his career and marrying the love of his life. I hugged my sister, shook Connor's hand. And I went home alone, wondering why I always felt like I was watching other people's lives through glass. After the wedding, I saw them less and less. I wasn't invited to their housewarming in early November. Mom said they were keeping it small. I wasn't invited to Mom's birthday dinner at Lauren's request. Mom said Lauren wanted to host just close family this year. And then, on November 10th, we had another family dinner. Just the 4 of us. Mom, Lauren, Connor, and me. Connor mentioned the Summit deal again. Said he was in final stages, waiting to hear back from procurement, confident it was going to go through. I should have connected it then. I should have asked more questions. But I'd been trained not to ask questions, trained to stay quiet, trained to be easy. So I just nodded and finished my dinner and drove home. And I missed it. I missed every single warning sign. Because here's what I didn't tell them. Here's what they never asked. I'm not a hospital administrator. I'm a senior procurement manager at Summit Healthcare Systems. I've been there for 4 years. I've been promoted twice. I manage vendor contracts worth up to $2 million. I make $94,000 a year. I have an office on the executive floor with a view of downtown Indianapolis. And I am very, very good at my job. But my family didn't know that. Because I'd stopped telling them. Because every time I succeeded, Lauren felt smaller. Every time I mentioned a promotion, Mom looked worried that I was getting too focused on work. So I let them think I did paperwork, filed forms, scheduled meetings. I let them underestimate me. And that's how I ended up reviewing a $1.92 million contract proposal from a company called MedTech Innovations, without realizing that the VP of sales listed on every email was my brother-in-law. The proposal came in mid-September. Standard RFP response. Surgical monitoring equipment for 12 operating rooms across 4 of our hospitals. 3-year contract. 3 companies bid. MedTech was one of them. I was assigned as lead reviewer. The sales contact was listed as C. Harrison Pierce. Connor's full name is Connor Harrison Pierce, but nobody in the family calls him that. We just call him Connor. And on every email, every document, every piece of correspondence, he signed as C. Harrison Pierce, VP of Sales and Business Development. I had no idea it was him. For 6 weeks, I reviewed his proposal. I emailed him technical questions. I pushed back on his pricing, which was 14% higher than the lowest bid. I requested additional compliance documentation. I asked for customer references. He responded professionally, a little eager, a little defensive when I asked hard questions, but nothing unusual, just another vendor trying to close a deal. And then, on November 25th, I was home reviewing the revised proposal he'd submitted, and I saw his full signature block at the bottom of a document. Connor Harrison Pierce, VP of Sales and Business Development, MedTech Innovations, Inc. I stared at that name for a full minute. Then I Googled him. LinkedIn profile, professional headshot, same company, same person, my brother-in-law. The man my sister had married a month ago. The man who'd convinced my mother I was too difficult for family dinners. Was the vendor whose proposal I'd been reviewing for 6 weeks. And he had no idea. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I emailed my supervisor Angela Chen. Angela, need to disclose a personal connection. MedTech vendor C.H. Pierce is my sister's husband, married October 26th. Just realized yesterday. Recommend I recuse from final decision. Can you take lead on vendor meeting? Renee. Angela replied within an hour. Thanks for disclosure. Meeting already scheduled November 29th, 9 a.m. with clinical ops and IT security. Too late to reschedule without raising vendor concerns. You intend to maintain continuity, but I'll sit in as observer and make final call. Document everything. Forward me all correspondence. Angela. So I had 3 days. 3 days before I'd have to sit across a conference table from Connor Pierce and watch him realize that the person he'd called too difficult for Thanksgiving was the person who'd been evaluating his career. On November 27th, the night before Thanksgiving, my mother called. I was in my apartment, cooking dinner, normal Wednesday evening. The phone rang at 6:15. Hi, sweetie, do you have a minute? Sure, Mom. What's up? There was a pause. So, Lauren and I were talking about Thanksgiving, and honey, we think it might be best if you sit this one out this year. I stopped stirring the pasta. What? Connor's under a lot of stress with work right now. He's got this huge deal that's really important, and he just needs Thursday to be relaxing. You know how you can be sometimes, sweetheart. You ask a lot of questions. You make people feel like they're being interviewed. I set down the spoon, very carefully. I make people feel interviewed. You know what I mean. Connor needs one holiday where nobody feels tense, where he doesn't feel like he's being analyzed. Lauren just wants one Thanksgiving where she can enjoy her husband without worrying about the mood. So I'm the mood problem. Don't be like that. You've always been the independent one. You don't really need us the way Lauren does. She needs this. Connor needs this. And you're so good at understanding, honey. This is why you're my easy one. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, feeling something inside me go very, very quiet. I'll save you a plate, okay? Mom continued. We can do lunch on Saturday, just us. Okay, Mom. You're not mad, are you? No. Good. Love you, sweetie. Bye. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't call Lauren. I didn't throw anything or scream or do any of the things people do when they're hurt. I just stood there, and I thought, they have no idea what they just did. If you've ever been called too much, too difficult, too intense, drop a comment and let me know. You're not alone. I spent Thanksgiving alone, ordered Thai food, went for a long run, came home and opened my laptop. I pulled up Connor's revised proposal, read through it line by line, made notes. Pricing still 10% above the lowest bid. Compliance documentation better but still gaps. Implementation timeline aggressive. References adequate but not strong. My professional recommendation, if I'd been making it, would have been clear. Carlson Medical. Lower cost, stronger track record, proven implementation. But I wasn't making the recommendation anymore. I'd recused myself. All I had to do was sit in that meeting Friday morning and watch it happen. Around 8 that evening, my phone buzzed. Text from Mom. Saved you a beautiful plate, honey. Turkey, stuffing, the works. Everyone had such a lovely time. Connor's boss was so impressed with the dinner. Lauren's so happy. I didn't respond. Lauren posted on Instagram, photo of their dining room table, turkey centerpiece, Connor's arm around her. Caption: Grateful for new beginnings. First Thanksgiving as the Pierces. I wasn't in the photo. Wasn't mentioned. Wasn't there. I closed Instagram and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be difficult. I just didn't know Connor was going to make it so much worse. I woke up at 6:15 Friday morning, 15 minutes before my alarm. My heart was already racing. I got dressed carefully. Navy suit, white blouse, low heels. The version of myself that made people take me seriously even when they didn't want to. I arrived at the office at 8:15, 45 minutes early. Conference room B12 is on the 8th floor. Executive wing, glass walls. You can see in from the hallway. I set up the room, put my nameplate at the head of the table. Renee Blair Walker, Senior Procurement Manager. I use my middle name professionally, have for years. It keeps work and personal life separate, or it used to. Dr. Patricia Morgan arrived at 8:50, Clinical Operations Director. Sharp, no nonsense, doesn't waste time. Angela arrived at 8:55, sat in the back corner, observer position. At 8:58, the receptionist called. Ms. Walker, MedTech representatives are here. I took one breath, two. Send them up. And them? The door opened at exactly 9 o'clock. Connor walked in first. Charcoal gray suit, lavender tie, leather portfolio, confident stride. He was talking as he entered. Good morning, thanks so much for... He stopped, saw the nameplate, saw me. All the color drained from his face. Renee? Behind him, a younger man, Jeff something, the technical product manager, looked confused. I kept my voice calm, professional. Good morning, Mr. Pierce, Mr. Ramos. Please have a seat. We're ready to begin. Connor didn't move, just stood there, 3 feet inside the door, staring at me like I was a ghost. I didn't know you worked here. I've worked at Summit for 4 years. His eyes went to the nameplate again, then back to me. You're R. Walker? You're the procurement manager? Senior procurement manager, yes. He looked at Dr. Morgan, at Angela, back to me. Does Lauren know about this? It was the wrong question to ask. It told me everything. He wasn't surprised I worked at Summit. He was surprised I had power. Mr. Pierce, I said, gesturing to the empty chairs, we have an hour scheduled to review your revised proposal. Shall we begin? He sat down, slowly, like he was trying to figure out if this was real. Jeff sat down too, clearly uncomfortable. Dr. Morgan had her pen ready. Angela was taking notes. Connor set his portfolio on the table, didn't open it. I need to understand something. How long have you known I was the MedTech vendor? I discovered the connection on November 25th. I immediately disclosed it to my supervisor, Director Chen, who is present today as observer. He turned to Angela. And you didn't think to reassign this? Angela's voice was measured, firm. Ms. Walker disclosed appropriately. She's recused from final decision-making. I'm here to ensure process integrity. Is there a specific concern you'd like to raise formally? Connor turned back to me. You've been reviewing my proposal for 2 months. You've been emailing me, and you never said anything. I didn't realize C. Harrison Pierce was you until 5 days ago. You use your middle name professionally. Our family knows you as Connor. But once you knew, I cut him off. Calm. Clear. I disclosed to my supervisor within 12 hours. This meeting was already scheduled. Director Chen is overseeing to prevent any appearance of bias. Mr. Pierce, do you have concerns about the procurement process itself, or shall we proceed with your presentation? His jaw clenched. His legs started bouncing under the table. Jeff whispered something to him. Connor ignored it. I just think it's important to note that this is an unusual situation. My wife's sister reviewing my company's proposal. How do I know this is even being evaluated fairly? Dr. Morgan set down her pen. Mr. Pierce, I've been in this room for 6 minutes and you've spent all of them questioning our staff instead of presenting your proposal. That doesn't suggest confidence in your product. With respect, I'm trying to ensure process integrity, Dr. Morgan interrupted. Director Chen has addressed that. Do you have additional concerns, or can we move to substance? Connor was losing the thread. I could see it happening. He turned back to me, voice rising. How long have you even been in procurement? Lauren said you did admin work. How do I know you're even qualified to evaluate a contract this size? Silence. Angela stood up. Dr. Morgan stopped writing. Jeff put his head in his hands, and I sat there, hands folded, watching Connor Pierce realize what he'd just done. Mr. Pierce, Angela said, her voice like ice, you've just questioned the professional qualifications of a senior manager in front of clinical leadership. That's inappropriate. Connor stood up fast, panicking now. No, I didn't mean. I just meant that there's clearly a conflict here. She shouldn't be the one. I've already recused myself from the final decision, I said, still calm, still seated. Director Chen will make the call. But you've been influencing this from the start. His voice was too loud now. People walking past the glass walls slowed down to look. You've been emailing me for weeks, asking all these questions, pushing back on everything. That's my job. No, it's... He gestured wildly. Lauren told me you do this. You make everything difficult. You interrogate people. This is exactly what she was talking about. You can't just let things be easy. Mr. Pierce. Angela moved between him and the table. This meeting is paused. No, wait. Connor's face was red now. I didn't mean, Jeff stood up. Connor, stop talking. But Connor couldn't stop. This is exactly the problem. She makes people feel like they're on trial. You can't tell me this is a fair process when she's the one. Mr. Pierce, Dr. Morgan said quietly, you're making this significantly worse. And in that moment, I watched Connor Pierce make his choice. Not the choice a professional would make. The choice a weak man makes when he realizes he's been caught. I stood up. Given Mr. Pierce's concerns about my impartiality and the personal relationship he's referenced, I'm formally recusing myself from this procurement decision. Director Chen will take over the evaluation. Dr. Morgan, I'll forward you all technical documentation this afternoon. Dr. Morgan nodded. Understood. Thank you, Renee. I looked at Connor. One last time. Mr. Pierce, I hope you and MedTech receive a fair evaluation. Good luck with your proposal. I picked up my laptop and portfolio. Angela said, Renee, I'll see you in my office in 15 minutes. Of course. I walked to the door. Steady pace. No rushing. No drama. Connor started to say something. Renee, wait. I didn't stop. Didn't turn around. I opened the door and walked out. Behind me, I heard Jeff's voice. What the hell did you just do? I went to my office, closed the door, sat down. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from the effort it had taken not to say what I really wanted to say. You didn't exclude me from Thanksgiving because I was difficult. You excluded me because you knew I'd see exactly who you were. And you were right. I opened my laptop, typed an email to Angela. Formally recused. All files transferred. Recommend committee review without my input. Hit send. And I realized something. I'd just done exactly what they'd always expected me to do. I'd made things difficult. I'd asked the wrong questions. I'd refused to make it easy. And this time, it was going to cost Connor everything. Angela came to my office 20 minutes later. "You handled that perfectly," she said. "Recusal was the right call, and for what it's worth, his behavior in that room told me everything I need to know about his company's professionalism. What happens now? Now I do my job. I review all 3 proposals with fresh eyes. Committee meets Monday. We make a decision based on merit, compliance, and vendor conduct." And the incident? HR and legal are reviewing. That's separate from procurement, but between you and me? She leaned against my doorframe. Someone who can't keep their composure in a routine vendor meeting isn't someone we want managing $1 million implementation across 4 hospitals. She told me to take the rest of the day off. I went home. Not because I was falling apart, but because staying in that building meant pretending I didn't care that my family had just chosen a man who'd imploded his own career over me. The weekend was quiet. Mom texted Saturday morning. "Hope you're having a nice weekend, honey. Leftovers are in the fridge if you want to stop by." I didn't respond. Lauren texted Saturday afternoon. "Can we talk soon? Miss you?" I didn't respond to that either. I went for a long walk, meal prepped for the week, watched a movie I didn't really pay attention to, and I waited. Monday afternoon, Angela emailed me. "Committee meeting tomorrow, 1 p.m. You're not required to attend, but if you want closure, you're welcome to observe. A." I stared at that email for 10 minutes, then I replied, "I'll be there." The committee met in the same conference room where Connor had self-destructed 3 days earlier. 5 people. Angela, Tom Rodriguez from Finance, Dr. Morgan, Sarah Kim from Operations, James Whitfield from IT Security. I sat in the back, observer only. Angela presented all 3 proposals, walked through pricing, compliance, implementation timelines, vendor references. When she got to MedTech, she said, all 3 vendors meet technical requirements. However, MedTech's pricing is 10% above the lowest bid, compliance documentation has minor gaps, and there's a documented vendor conduct issue from last week's meeting. Tom Rodriguez looked up. "What kind of conduct issue?" Vendor representative questioned staff qualifications publicly and made personal remarks. Incident report filed with HR. "That's concerning for a long-term partnership," Tom said. The discussion went on for 20 minutes. The vote was unanimous. Carlson Medical, lower cost, stronger compliance. Proven track record. MedTech eliminated due to pricing premium and professional conduct concerns. Meeting adjourned at 2:17. I sat in the back of that room and watched 5 people who'd never met Connor Pierce decide his company wasn't worth the risk. Not because I'd poisoned them against him, because he'd shown them exactly who he was, and they'd believed him. The rejection letter went out Tuesday afternoon. Standard template, no explanation. Just, "Thank you for your proposal. We've selected an alternate vendor." At 2:51, my phone rang. Lauren. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Renee, what did you do?" Her voice was high, panicked. "Connor just got an email from Summit. They rejected his proposal. He said you were in the meeting. He said you—" I recused myself from the decision, Lauren. "But you knew! You knew he was the vendor and you never told me. You've been reviewing his contract for months." "I didn't know until November 25th. Connor uses his middle name professionally. I told my supervisor immediately. I followed protocol." "You could have helped him." I closed my eyes. "Helped him? You excluded me from Thanksgiving because Connor thought I was too difficult. You erased me from your family dinner so he could relax. Why would I help him?" "Because he's my husband. Because we're family." "You told me I wasn't family on November 27th. You don't get to decide I am now because you need something." "This is his career, Renee. This contract was everything. We were counting on this." "Then he shouldn't have questioned my qualifications in front of my colleagues. He shouldn't have accused me of bias. He shouldn't have lost his temper in a professional meeting." I didn't make those choices, Lauren. He did. I don't believe you. You did this because you're jealous. You've always been jealous that I hung up. 10 minutes later, Mom called. Renee, Lauren just called me in tears. She says Connor lost the summit contract. She says you were involved. I was the procurement manager assigned to review it. I disclosed the conflict of interest and recused myself from the decision. But couldn't you have, I don't know, put in a good word? He's family. He questioned my professional qualifications in front of my supervisor and clinical leadership. He made it personal. And for the record, Mom, he's the one who told you I was too difficult for Thanksgiving. There was a pause. Well, you can be. You know how you are, honey. How am I, Mom? You ask a lot of questions. You make people feel uncomfortable. Connor was just trying to make people feel comfortable by excluding me? Don't make this about Thanksgiving. This is about Connor's job. No, Mom. Thanksgiving is exactly what this is about. You chose his comfort over my presence. And now you want me to choose his career over my integrity. Family helps family, Renee. You decided I wasn't family 4 days ago. You can't change that now because it's convenient. That's not fair. I have to go, Mom. She called back 3 times. I didn't answer. That night she texted, "Family meeting, Friday night, my house, 6 p.m. We need to talk about this, all of us." I stared at that text for a long time. Then I typed, "I'll be there." Have you ever been the person your family expects to understand while everyone else gets to be upset? Let me know in the comments. Over the next week, I learned what happened to Connor. His company had been counting on the summit contract. It represented over 40% of his annual sales quota. Without it, he missed his numbers by a mile. His CEO called him in for a meeting on December 5th, asked what happened in the procurement meeting. Connor tried to spin it, said there was a conflict of interest, that I'd sabotaged him. But Summit's legal team had already sent documentation, the incident report, witness statements from Dr. Morgan and the IT director. Connor couldn't claim sabotage when the record showed he'd questioned my qualifications, raised his voice, and made personal attacks in front of neutral witnesses. He couldn't claim I'd influenced the decision when I'd recused myself and the committee had voted unanimously based on pricing and compliance. On December 15th, Connor resigned from MedTech. He said it was mutual, that he wanted to explore new opportunities. But his LinkedIn status changed to open to work. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just tired. Friday, December 5th, 6 o'clock. I pulled up to my mother's house, the same house where I'd sat at dozens of family dinners, always careful not to ask too many questions, always making myself smaller so everyone else could be comfortable. I rang the doorbell. Mom opened it. "Hi, sweetie. Thanks for coming." Lauren and Connor were already there, sitting on the couch together, united front. Mom gestured to the armchair across from them. I sat down. "So," Mom said, settling into her own chair, "we need to talk about what happened with Connor's contract." I waited. Connor leaned forward. "Renee, I want to start by apologizing for how I reacted in that meeting. I was caught off guard. I didn't handle it well." "Okay? But I think we can all agree this whole situation was unusual. I didn't know you worked in procurement. You didn't tell me you were reviewing my proposal. And then when I walked into that room and saw you panicked," I said. "I was surprised. You questioned my qualifications in front of my boss and clinical leadership. You accused me of bias. You raised your voice. That wasn't surprise, Connor. That was a choice." Lauren jumped in. "He said he was sorry." I looked at her. "He's not sorry he did it. He's sorry it cost him the contract." Connor's jaw tightened. "That's not true. I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable." "You didn't make me uncomfortable. You made yourself look unprofessional, and that's why the committee rejected your bid." "The committee? So you weren't involved in the decision?" "I recused myself, 5 other people reviewed the proposals and voted, unanimously, for the other vendor. Based on what criteria? Lower cost, stronger compliance record, proven implementation history, and yes, vendor conduct. Vendor conduct? You mean what happened in the meeting? I mean the fact that you couldn't stay professional for 14 minutes. Lauren's voice went up. Renee, this is his career. This contract was huge for us. We were counting on that money. Then he shouldn't have sabotaged himself. Renee, that's harsh, Mom said. I turned to her. Is it? What exactly should I have done differently, Mom? You could have, I don't know, helped him prepare, given him guidance. I was the person evaluating his proposal. That would be unethical. You could have at least told him you were involved. I didn't know until 5 days before Thanksgiving, and when I found out, I disclosed it to my supervisor immediately. I followed every rule. Connor stood up. But you didn't tell me. You're not my supervisor. You're my client. I'm not required to notify vendors of internal personnel matters. Lauren was crying now. You sound like a robot. This is our life, Renee. And that's when something inside me broke open. I stood up. And what about my life, Lauren? What about the fact that you excluded me from Thanksgiving because Connor thought I was too difficult? What about the fact that I spent that day alone while you celebrated with the man who just accused me of being unqualified at my own job? Mom started to speak. Renee, that's not… No, I'm not done. I turned to face all 3 of them. You want to talk about family helping family? Let's talk about it. They stared at me. I'd never raised my voice to them before, never stood up like this, never refused to shrink. Do you know what I do, Mom? My actual job? She looked uncertain. You work in hospital administration. I'm a senior procurement manager. I approve contracts worth up to $2 million. I manage vendor relationships across 4 states. I've been there 4 years. I've been promoted twice. I make $94,000 a year. Her face went white. What? You've never asked. Not once. Because you decided a long time ago that Lauren was the one who needed attention, and I was the one who'd figure it out on my own. That's not fair. Fair? My voice was steady, not yelling, just clear. You excluded me from Thanksgiving because Connor said I make people uncomfortable. You told me I don't need you the way Lauren does. You've spent my entire adult life making me smaller so Lauren could feel bigger. And now you're angry because I wouldn't risk my professional reputation to save Connor from his own behavior? Lauren stood up. That's not what we're asking. Yes, it is. You're asking me to have made a different choice, to have bent the rules, to have protected him, even though he's the one who called me too difficult, even though he's the one who questioned whether I was qualified to do my job. Connor was red-faced now, standing. I didn't mean it like that. I looked at him directly. Yes, you did. You meant it exactly like that. Because you're not afraid of me because I'm cruel. You're afraid of me because I ask questions. And men like you can't handle being asked questions. That's not true. I just think this whole thing was set up to… To what? Make you look bad? You did that yourself. I wasn't in that room to sabotage you. I was there to do my job. And you couldn't handle the fact that the person you'd excluded from Thanksgiving was the person evaluating your work. Mom tried to intervene, stood up, tried to hug me. Honey, I didn't know. About your job. About how much… I stepped back. You didn't know because you didn't ask. I'm asking now. Now that you need something from me. Now that Connor lost his job and you want me to fix it. But where were you when I got promoted? When I bought my apartment? When I spent Thanksgiving alone? Tears started running down her face. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving. I thought you'd understand. I did understand, Mom. That's the problem. I understood that you'd choose Connor's comfort over my presence. I understood that no matter how successful I became, I'd always be the easy one. The one who doesn't need as much. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Lauren was full on crying now. Renee, we're family. We're supposed to support each other. You excluded me from your family. You made that choice. You don't get to call me family now because you need me to save Connor's career. I never meant to. Yes, you did. You meant every bit of it. Because for the first time in your life, you had something I didn't. A husband, a wedding, a happy ending, and you weren't about to let me ask questions and ruin it. Lauren's voice broke. You did ruin it. You cost Connor his job. I picked up my coat. No, Lauren. Connor cost Connor his job. I just refused to save him from himself. Mom grabbed my arm. Renee, please, we can work this out. I looked at her hand on my arm. She let go. No, Mom, we can't. Because working it out means I apologize for not protecting Connor. It means I make myself smaller so you can all feel comfortable again. And I'm done doing that. So you're just going to walk away from your family? I moved toward the door. You walked away from me first, 3 weeks ago, when you decided I was too difficult for Thanksgiving. I'm just stopping pretending I didn't notice. Please don't do this. I turned back. One last time. I've spent my whole life being the easy one. The one who understands. The one who doesn't make waves. And you know what that taught you? That you could erase me from holidays and I'd still show up when you needed something. I'm done showing up on those terms. Lauren was desperate now. So that's it? You're cutting us off? I'm setting a boundary. If you want me in your life, you have to see me. The real me. Not the version you find convenient. Mom's voice shook. What does that mean? My hand was on the doorknob. It means you have to admit that you chose Connor's feelings over mine. That you've chosen Lauren's feelings over mine for years. That you made my success feel like a problem because it made her feel small. And that you were wrong. Mom opened her mouth. Closed it. Couldn't say it. Not yet. When you're ready to say it, I said quietly. Call me. But until then, I need space. I walked out. Didn't slam the door, just walked to my car, got in, sat there for 3 minutes before I started the engine. And then I cried. Not sad crying, release crying, because I'd just done something I'd never done before. I'd chosen myself. The next 2 weeks were the quietest of my life. I went to work, reviewed contracts, had coffee with Angela, who'd become more than just my boss, went to the gym, read books, cooked meals. And I didn't call my mother, didn't call Lauren, didn't apologize. Mom texted on December 12th. Can we talk? I replied. Not yet. She didn't push. On December 15th, I learned that Connor had resigned from MedTech. On December 17th, Lauren changed her Facebook status to "It's complicated." On December 20th, at 7:30 in the evening, someone knocked on my door. I looked through the peephole. My mother. I opened the door. Mom. Hi, honey. Can I come in? Why are you here? Because I need to say something, and I need to say it to your face. I stepped aside. Let her in. We sat at my kitchen table. The one I'd bought with my first bonus. The table she'd never seen. I need to say something, she said, hands folded, and I need you to let me finish. I nodded. I've spent the last 2 weeks thinking about what you said, about how I chose Lauren over you, about how I made you the easy one, and you were right. She took a breath. I sacrificed you because I thought you didn't need me. You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. Lauren struggled with everything, and I told myself that was fair, that you were strong enough to handle it. But that's not what I was doing. Her voice cracked. I was punishing you for not needing me. I was choosing the daughter who made me feel necessary over the daughter who made me feel obsolete. I felt my throat tighten. And it wasn't just Thanksgiving. It was years. Every time you succeeded, and I barely noticed. Every time Lauren failed and I dropped everything. Every time I told you that you didn't need support because you always figured it out. She was crying now. Real tears. I made your strength feel like a burden. I made asking questions feel like a crime. I let Connor call you difficult, and I agreed with him because it was easier than admitting I'd been doing the same thing to you your whole life. Why are you telling me this now? Because Lauren left Connor 3 days ago. She's staying with me. And you know what she said? She said, Renee tried to warn me. Renee saw who he was, and I called her jealous. We sat in silence for a long moment. I see you now, Mom said quietly, and I'm sorry I didn't before. She didn't ask me to forgive her immediately. She didn't ask if we could go back to normal. She just sat there and let the truth land. Thank you for saying that, I finally said. Can you forgive me? Eventually. Maybe, but not yet. She nodded. I understand. If you want to be in my life, it has to be different. You have to see me, ask about my work, care about my wins, not just show up when you need something. I will. And you have to stop expecting me to make myself smaller. I'm not difficult, Mom. I'm clear. And I'm not apologizing for that anymore. I know. Lauren needs time too. She chose Connor over me. She has to own that before we can rebuild. She knows. I paused. Then, I'm hosting Christmas dinner. Here, it's going to be small, a few friends, you can come, but only if you're ready to be here without expecting me to pretend everything's fine. What about Lauren? Not this year. She needs to sit with what she did, and I need space from her. Mom's face fell, but she nodded. Okay. She left at 8:12. No hug. But something had shifted, and I realized I'd just set a boundary with my mother for the first time in my life, and the world hadn't ended. On Christmas morning, I cooked honey-glazed ham, roasted Brussels sprouts, garlic mashed potatoes, apple pie from scratch. At 6 o'clock, my doorbell started ringing. Angela arrived first, brought wine and a warm smile. Dr. Morgan arrived second, brought flowers. Mia, my college roommate, arrived third, hugged me tight and whispered, I'm so proud of you. Mom arrived last, quiet, humble, holding nothing but a card. We sat down at 6:15. 5 of us around my table. Not a full table, not a perfect family, but every person there had chosen to be there, and I had chosen them back. We ate, we talked about work, about books, about plans for the new year. Angela told a story about my first big contract negotiation. Mia reminded me of the time I said I'd never be good at standing up for myself. Look at you now, she said. Mom was quiet at first. Then she laughed at a story Dr. Morgan told, relaxed into her chair, looked at me across the table with something I hadn't seen before. Respect. After everyone left, Mom stayed to help clean up. We washed dishes side by side, didn't talk much, but it felt different, like we were building something new. On December 26th, Lauren texted, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but when you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen. I'm sorry, Renee, for all of it. I see it now. I read it 3 times, typed a response, deleted it, typed again. Finally sent. I'm not ready yet, but I'm glad you're safe. Take care of yourself. She replied, Thank you. I love you. I didn't respond to that. I put my phone down. Maybe one day Lauren and I would rebuild something, but it would have to be built on truth this time, not on me making myself small so she could feel big. My name is Renee Walker. I'm 28 years old. 3 weeks ago, my family excluded me from Thanksgiving because I made people uncomfortable, because I asked too many questions, because I was too difficult. And they were right. I am difficult. I'm difficult to lie to. I'm difficult to manipulate. I'm difficult to erase. I used to think difficult was something I needed to fix, a flaw, a problem, something that made me less worthy of love. But I was wrong. Difficult was just another word for clear, for honest, for unwilling to pretend. My family thought excluding me from Thanksgiving would make their holiday easier. What it actually did was show me who I was when no one was asking me to be smaller. I'm a senior procurement manager who makes $94,000 a year. I'm the person who asks the questions no one else wants to ask. I'm the daughter who finally stopped waiting for her family to see her. And I'm the woman who built a table of her own and only invited people who chose to be there. Not everyone gets a seat at that table anymore. And that's not cruelty. That's clarity. My mother is learning to earn her place back. My sister isn't ready yet. And Connor Pierce? He's gone. He lost his job, his marriage, and the contract he thought he deserved. Not because I sabotaged him, but because he sabotaged himself the moment he decided the person asking questions was the problem. This is what I learned. Being excluded for making people uncomfortable often means you were the only one seeing clearly. Family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It means mutual respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to shrink. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been called too much, too difficult, too intense, I want you to know something. You're not the problem. You're just difficult to fool. And that's the best thing you can be.